Hello, Eustace. It's nice to see that somebody who, first time he came to see me, shook my hand. I knew you were somebody different. Both my ring and my bracelet were missing. But you really did. You came in a situation that I think was quite different to what you had been used to in the past. But you were so enthusiastic and so excited about what concept you had that you convinced all of the people at Lincoln Mercury that you had this terrific way to sell a car. And you have to say that you were quite a salesman, because how could you convince people to sell just half a car? And that's what you did. And I remember when I took you in to see Gordon McKenzie, and I explained before what you had in mind, what your concept was. And he thought that possibly I had been smoking a little marijuana. And he said, "Joe, this doesn't make any sense." I said, well, you know, not as you and I are talking about it, you're right. It doesn't make any sense. But by God, when Eustace was explaining this to me, it sounded very, very good. So we took a flyer, and you put this in at some Lincoln Mercury dealers like Bob Tasca. And as they say, the rest is history.
We had been doing a lot of work on leasing, and I think it was something that we had wanted for a long time to do more with. And I think when Eustace came along with the idea, it seemed like a natural for us. Because Lincoln Mercury was a small organization, and we were looking for new ideas. We'd gone through a very tough time in the early 1980s, and we were looking for some marketing edges that we could use to help our dealers get their profitability back.
You know, I first ran into him way back in 1982 when Joe Cappy was pushing some silly leasing program of his. Now, Joe was obviously just a bit squirrely, because he wanted us to go out to Southern California, of all places, to push, of all things, 2-year leasing. Well, that's crazy. Everyone leased 4 years. And we were working on 5 and 6 years, you understand. Everyone knows that open-end leasing is the only thing that works in Southern California. Who wants to do anything like a closed-in 2-year lease? After all, you don't want that angry customer back after 2 years and start complaining, do you? Anyway, he's going to be upside down at the end of 2 years. He's going to be angry. Everyone knows that. But Cappy and Rui, they were pushing the thing. And Hal Barton said, "Don't get them mad." So we sat through a presentation of Wolfie's silliness. Obviously, Ford Credit can't earn enough money in 2 years to recover their startup costs. Crazy idea. We got to have 4 years. And I'll say this, nothing's changed since then. Wolfie's still pushing that 2-year stuff. Did you know that? 2-year leases. Can you imagine anybody liking that?
I guess the first place he started was out in California, in San Diego, and I was out there at the time as the manager. And he came in with an idea that a lot of us thought might have some merit to it, but we really had no way of figuring out whether we could ever do it. I guess that it started off so slowly that Eustace told us that people would get off of it and we'd have to go back and retrain them, and none of us believed that. We said, well, we'll be able to handle it. We were, of course, not able to handle it, and I think we failed on about the first 142 that we tried. But anyhow, we finally did succeed. But I guess if I look back over the history of it, the first thing that I would say is it was kind of like a dream. I'm not sure that Eustace will go down in the history books like Henry Ford with a new idea, but his idea has been so good. And if we were able to execute it as well as he can dream it up and convince us that it's a good idea, then we'd have a heck of a program. But we're getting better. But I think what he tried to do, he transcended all the different ways that we've done business at Ford all of our lives, because we live, I like to say we have a 70-day mentality, and that's probably stretching it. But Ford Motor Company and our dealers usually look on a very short period of time. And with the pre-trade or the half car or the 24-month lease, we've got to think differently, and we've never done that before. So it was a big, big culture shock for the Ford Motor Company.
There were people who either believed or didn't believe, and if you didn't believe, they never even wanted to give you the time of day. And we had key elements of the company that were very difficult to get to embrace this concept. As a result, we constantly seem to have a struggle to move forward.
Eustace back in those days, and I'm talking 83, 84 for me when I started, had to sell two groups of people. Some of the other people on this tape are going to talk about his problems with the dealers, and they were many. A lot of the dealers didn't understand, but I remember in particular his problems with some of us. In fact, Eustace, I remember very well a day in Tampa, Florida, with Mr. Hal Fader, when you were going to explain to Mr. Fader just how this program worked and just how simple it was to understand. For those of you that don't know, Mr. Fader, some of you know him, was the district manager in our Jacksonville district, and everybody knows how successful the program has been in Jacksonville and in Florida. But back in the dark ages, we had to convince Harold, or Hal, just what the program was about. We weren't able to do it. We couldn't seem to do it, so we brought Eustace down, because he's so clear in expressing himself sometimes. And he came armed with a famous flip chart, which I'm not even sure that all of the people in this room have seen, but it described the three great options, and it described how a lease works and the triangle, just pay on the difference triangle. And we started at about 8 in the morning. Eustace was all ready. This was very important. We had a meeting at 1 with the dealers, and we wanted to make sure that Fader, who would pitch the thing to the dealers, had a real fundamental understanding of this. So we figured, okay, with 8, we'll be done at 9, and then Eustace can rehearse and Harold can rehearse. And so 9 came, and Harold's eyes were starting to cloud over a bit. Eustace was still on the first page of the flip chart, which I think had 150 pages. So I had to go. I had to go attend to the meeting because I was responsible. And I came back at 9:30, at 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30. Eustace was still on the first page. Fader was completely lost. I tried to intervene. Eustace wouldn't let me. We couldn't get him to stop. Harold wanted to know. Harold was getting mad. Eustace was getting mad. Finally, at 1 o'clock for a 1:15 meeting, we got them out of the room. And as we were walking to the meeting room, I said, well, how do you feel about this, Harold? Do you understand? He said, hell no. He said, I don't know what this means. He said, but this gentleman just spent 3.5 hours of his time, so I'm going to tell the dealers to buy it. And that's exactly what he did. It's just a reminiscence about how tough it was back in those days, and how most of us who were involved appreciate all the effort that went into in making us make this program work. Harold went in and talked to the dealers, and he said at the end, he said, I don't know anything about this damn program, but by God, it works, and you're going to buy it. And everybody bought it.
It sounded so good, and we had gone through it so many times. What we really felt is we really need somebody at retail to evaluate it. Eustace, of course, being a former dealer himself, we knew that if we put him in contact with somebody like Bob Tasca, we would really sort out and find out if we really had a good idea here, or if we were being sweet-talked into something that we shouldn't. Bob Tasca was one of the highest volume profit dealers at Lincoln Mercury, was also one of the finest in terms of product and marketing. He was a leader. We used him at Lincoln Mercury to determine all kinds of and judge different programs for the management. And we thought Bob Tasca would be the ideal guy to evaluate this half-car plan of Eustace Wolfington's. So we called Bob and said, we're going to send Eustace up to you. He's got an idea that we think is really interesting, but I said, it sounds so good, I think it could be a scam, and that Eustace is probably one of the world's finest con men, because he's really got me convinced, but I can't believe this thing would work the way he said it would, because it just sounds too easy, and it's such a great way to sell cars. So please, when you see Eustace, listen to what he's got to say, and if you don't like it, and if you see through it and it really is a con, throw him right out. Well, needless to say, Bob Tasca sat down with Eustace, was sold on the program, said this is a fantastic way to sell cars. He's put the program in, and he's the biggest proponent, and has got one of the largest volume dealerships in the United States, and it's all using the half-car system.
I think Ford stuck with it because of a few people within the company who really believed in Eustace. And I give Eustace a ton of credit because he never gave up. Every time it'd get down and the thing wasn't working, then the next thing I know, we'd be having a meeting. But Eustis wouldn't let it die. And someone with lesser tenacity, this thing would have gone by the waysides, but Eustis refused to let us get out.
Actually, it was Bob Rui's vision that and support that really kept us going. I mean, it was, we got to find a way. Keep pushing, keep trying. Without guys like that, you just would have never kept this thing alive. Bob Rui, Bud Coughlin, Ross Roberts, you know, all the key vice presidents within North America really supported that and kept this whole thing going.
Well, I think the relationship is terrific. I think we've had probably the last 12 months the biggest growth together that we've had in terms of the amount of training effort put in by Half a Car, and certainly in terms of the sales growth that the dealers have had. I mean, in terms of leasing sales increase. And Ford division is now just as aggressive as Lincoln Mercury, and that's been a big added factor to the program.
I'm sort of the rookie when it comes to the Half a Car Association because of my association with Ford Division and Red Carpet and short-term leasing, which has really been about a year's time frame. If you look back at the past year, I think at least from a personal viewpoint, or maybe from Ford Division standpoint, we might be able to say that the last year has in fact been the best year of that association because so much has happened. Just to recap a few of the things, it's especially gratifying to me that we've trained well over 300 Ford Division dealers in the past year in the Half a Car methods and the plans and the lease training and everything about that, which is probably 30% of the volume of all the Ford Division dealers that we've trained over the life cycle of the whole leasing process. But probably the most interesting aspect of last year was that Ford Division got itself involved enough to be increasing its volume on about a 30% clip per month. And one of the biggest reasons that happened outside of getting into the middle markets was that we brought Ford Division light trucks, and that's appropriate that I'm standing by a couple of them, onto the leasing scene. And I think I have Sam Jones to thank for a lot of that, because about a year ago, when we were standing in front of the bar at the last family meeting, the first time we had met, he was telling me that Ford Division doesn't know how to lease trucks, probably couldn't lease trucks, and probably couldn't get Texans to lease. Now, when one Texan gives another Texan a challenge like that, there has to be a response. So we got busy and we went back and we put the C&I and the consumer offer programs into place and got the middle market training involved to the point that Ford Division now leases more trucks than it does cars. Probably 2/3 of our volume now is trucks, and the two most leased vehicles, not only in the truck industry but for Ford Motor Company, happen to be the two we're standing by, and that's the Explorer and the F-Series. So I think that's very gratifying and kind of says where we've come from, where we are, and perhaps where we're going.
Looking back over the last 10 years that I've been heavily involved with the leasing industry, both from a fleet and a retail leasing business, I had a lot of doubts as to whether it could actually work back in the 81 through 83 period. And as we got things moving and it moved along very well, all of a sudden the tax laws changed. And that was another severe setback. And now it's been encouraging to come back into Red Carpet Lease and see the teamwork that's been achieved between Ford and Lincoln Mercury and Ford Credit and the association with the Half a Car Group, and the success that we've achieved with the strategy and both implementing it and the actual success of the strategy itself. So I think everybody involved should be commended on being able to work together and achieve the final goal that we want of selling more vehicles.
Well, I'd say to all the people of Half a Car, the most important thing is understand that it's a big job to change our culture, but it can be done. And understand that we're working with you, that it's the right kind of a process for us to have. I really do believe that it's part of the long-range future of this business. And those of you who are involved on the ground floor, I just think have that much more potential than anybody else. So keep doing it and keep making us doing it, and together we'll be a success.
This has meant a tremendous thing to Ford because it's a place where we can lead the world. We have doubled our volume in the 3 or 4 years that we've put the full training into effect with both divisions. And I know very well we're going to double it again with the work that everybody is doing.
The best part of the picture is the future, not the past. As I've stressed, the organization continues to grow and the relationship continues to grow.
My message to everyone at Half a Car is I've enjoyed all the toil and the hard work, the laughter and the tears, and I hope that I'm around for many more special times with everyone at Half a Car. I do have to say one thing to Eustace. Eustace, you can always tell an Irishman. Trouble is, you can't tell him very much. Thanks again.